John.
Nick, we're back. We're
We're
back.
back. How does it feel being part of the post-Kanreki world?
Ah, two weeks of recovery from
Yeah.
near daily posting, reviewing work, trying to find something fascinating in the shed to say about uh, Newt Scamander's textbook. Okay. Uh,
Now
it was
you
great
know,
though. I mean, seriously, Nick. What's great about it is people are catching up. People are, it was a lot. No, I think
it's
only like two or three people actually followed us day by day in that thing. But and the
I mean
comments are so flattering. Really, I mean, it's been so nice.
I've said before, 31 hours is a real commitment for anyone to consume. So I just want everyone, if they've got that far, to think how much of a commitment it was to film.
And for you to edit, I mean, really, for a person who's never edited film before, okay, do that 31 times in a month.
Yeah, talk about crash course. But we are only 3 weeks away now from the Hallmark Man. A little over 3 weeks, but three full weeks to the Hallmark Man. So this is now a fan cast. Are we going to do? We're going to really get behind the marketing impetus for the Hallmark Man.
No, we're not.
Well, not too much. Not too much.
No. I actually am really excited because I just finished a book I'll talk about later. But it is fun to be waiting and getting the
Yeah.
5 minutes of audio with Robert Glenister. I mean, if you don't think I fangirl that stuff, you're crazy. I was like, ooh, got to click on
Yes.
that right away. I got to
So
hear that.
I know that there's a couple of my friends on Twitter have already gone dark because they don't want to know anything about the first 5 minutes of the audiobook until they have the book in its proper covers in front of them, and then they will start reading. So a general warning, there's not going to be so many, but there's likely to be spoilers through this film.
Uncle Ted died.
Oh, there you go. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But Cormoran got his Royal Military Police beret.
Good for
With
you. Of course, he already has one.
Yeah,
Was there? There couldn't have been a difference, right? I mean, Uncle Ted's age in time of service is pretty mysterious, right? He's
yeah.
um, so maybe he has the previous king's beret.
No, no, the Queen has been around for literally that long. So I think the only difference is, I suspect Uncle Ted's beret was sized at 5 7/8, and I suspect Cormoran Strikes was sized at 59 centimeters.
Ah, okay. Wow. Okay. Nick, I'm gonna jump into this. We
Okay.
want to keep this to a thing. Right? We're more than 2 weeks recovered from our Kanreki Blitz birthday bonanza. 31 July, Lake and Shed post in celebration of Rowling's life and work. What do you think are the net takeaways from that effort before we go all fangirl here?
So um, I actually put a post up on the Hogwarts Professor weblog, basically giving my takeaways, and my overwhelming takeaway is one of pride. So I think we were both a little bit nervous starting this. Was anybody going to be interested? Were people going to be annoyed by getting Substack emails every single day from the one Substack? And we've both been so greatly encouraged with the likes and the comments that have been overwhelmingly supportive. We've upset some people. We've upset some people that I like and admire. We're not, or no, we're not going to get snarky about it. We, it's a sensitive topic, but I think we handled it as sensitively as we could have done. I think the people that have come with us on the journey, so they were watching the Kanreki episodes, they were seeing the shed artistry and the lake inspirations for all of her published works. Then we started to take a look as fourth generation scholars at the opera omnia, out of all her work. John has found brilliantly, I think, some golden threads. We explored the golden threads, and one of those is the golden thread of this lost child. If you don't put in all of that previous work, then it's just two old men talking about abortion. And that is far from the point of what we were doing.
Yeah, it is interesting that, Nick, the supportive things that we got, really, if you read the thread, we don't edit those. Yeah. We can't. Substack just puts them up, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we can close it, but if you open it, it's that way. All of them said variations on a, wow, that's really shocking.
Yeah.
But having followed you through this thing, I get it. And it bears discussion. All the people that went in attack mode made no reference to the Kanreki series at all and what we had done. So that's to be expected. What's your idea about Rowling being confronted about this?
So I think it would be a brave journalist that asked the question framed as the conclusion that we came to, with all the caveats and we say it's unreliable because we're making a biographical conclusion from textual analysis. What the question I would really like a journalist or anyone who's given the opportunity to talk to J.K. Rowling, the question I would ask is based around the golden thread. So this theme has been noticed. This theme of lost children and the loss of a child is so pervasive in your work. But what is behind that? What is your inspiration? What is that thing in the lake that is constantly giving you this idea? And hopefully asked it in an open way like that, it would give Rowling the opportunity to talk about it if she so wishes, and then completely debunk what we've come up with and give us a much better idea or confirm the theory.
Right, and that's how we would ask the question.
Yeah.
And that's how we've asked the question. Excuse me.
But
what I'm afraid of is the Fleet Street bozo that yes. doorsteps her and says, "Hey, have you had an abortion?"
Yeah.
Now, which
yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I made that post on the weblog is what I don't want people to say John and Nick are accusing J.K. Rowling of having an abortion, because you were really careful several times that you mentioned in the last two episodes on the golden thread and the impact of the golden thread, that it's the golden thread that it's important. So you went through the different types of lost child scenarios, and we both said, that this can't be the only theory. Have people given us alternatives?
Yeah, that's the thing is this is always meant to be the beginning of the conversation, not that we've solved the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And sure enough, the good news is it worked. that we've gotten 3 alternative explanations to the lost child golden thread that are compelling. Are they as good as the induced abortion hypothesis? And I want to, hat tip here, Louise Freeman. When you have an idea like this, it's a theory when there's a lot of evidence for it. When it's really, almost overwhelming. Then you grade that up to a theory. And the induced abortion idea, from the lake, inspiring the lost child thing, that is not a theory. That is at best an hypothesis. And there's it's more like it seems to be the most probable explanation, but needs a lot of work. And anyway, so the alternatives to that, they got their problems. I mean, there's three of them, basically. One is Aurora, our friend in Australia, I think, who argues that it's the universal experience of women. Then there's David Martin, who, when talking about the Gloria Conti story, which is really the only in-text abortion story we have, that it has a clear literary or film model that Rowling may have been just extrapolating from. And then there's the Christian redemption analogy. Now this is the one that I confess I'm most excited about. And we'll talk about the others, but this idea is that I can't tell you who came up with this idea. I can tell you the person that she pointed me to as someone who's voiced this idea, but that idea explains the lost child golden thread that stands. There's 40 lost children inside her work in 20 books. I mean, that's like, well, okay, that's a thing. The induced abortion hypothesis, however, only it has any value beyond gossip if it shows light on the text, if it gives you something, a view that you wouldn't get unless you were coming from that inspiration. And that was the happy birthday, Joe. You know, they were saying, hey, let's take this next step in Rowling studies. And I went through each of the Harry Potter novels and said, look, here is an instance where we have something interior which is exteriorized and eliminated. And it's a good thing, basically, that we have basically a spiritual abortion, and everyone applauds because that's a good thing. And that consequently, the series can be read in that light as an abortion apologetic, that it's not simple, it's not easy, but in the end, it's the best possible resolution. The sin redemption analogy, now here I'm going to quote from my friend who doesn't want to be named. All the evidence you give from Harry Potter also works better as an analog for original sin, which also works better with Voldemort's name. I'm very happy with multiple levels and layering in the series, and I'm happy to say Chamber of Secrets is both phallic and a medieval morality play, but I'm struggling with aborted child and original sin. I don't see it yet. As per my previous email, I have enjoyed this series and enjoyed the two of you working together, but I am not willing to go where these last two episodes go. I strongly suggest they be buried somewhere out of sight until a much more careful, nuanced version can be created. Can you guess that this person is an academic? Anyway, I was working this morning and was reminded of Vondeger's writings. And forgive me, I've never heard Vondeger's name said out loud, so I hope that's pronounced correctly. Nicholas Vondeger should probably get credit for unpacking Harry Potter imagery in relation to original sin. There is far more that can be done with this, but he's the earliest one I know making the claim. And I'm going to put that down below here. I'll put this link that I was sent. The Vondeger is writing about original sin and specifically the implicit theology of grace. I'm not going to go through all the original sin thing. I think we understand that you have a fallen nature and that Harry Potter reflects that, and all the good guys reflect that, in that they're torn between their base desires and their larger understanding of themselves. You see that especially in most crystallized format in Ron and Deathly Hallows. But we see that Harry and his struggle with, hey, I did it all by myself, but no, I did it with my friends. You know, he can't figure this out. But Vonneger's idea is about the implicit theology of grace. I'm going to read. This is relatively long, but this is you know, they don't teach theology in engineering schools in Wales. So I'm gonna give you a quick implicit theology of grace, I think, here. Okay, Vonneger writes, when we encounter like qualities in our everyday lives, we talk of people being gifted and talented, being lucky and fortunate, and being sociable and able to sustain personal relationships. We are in the presence of people who live by what they are given by chance or by the people, without developing any claim on being gifted, without denying their dependence on these gifts, without becoming high-handed because of their luck, and with full appreciation of the gift character of these riches. The Christian believer, however, thinks that these descriptions are only true to a certain extent, that they are too superficial and do not reach the essence of the gift character of human life and its development. When Christians express that essence in traditional language, they call it being graced. What the secular world calls luck or talent or chance, Christianity believes to be God's gifts that are completely gratuitous. Which is to say, not, things that you've earned or whatever. More recent 20th century theology has strongly emphasized that grace is not to be understood as a special favor or thing God grants, but as a special relationship God enters into with human beings. Therefore, human relationships that are founded on mutual trust and appreciation, on gratuity and freedom from demand, are the most adequate consequences of this divine grace and their closest analogy in human relationships. The ability to forgive, the great importance of which we say in the last section that we wrote, is one of the most important prerequisites for sustaining good relationships with fallible human beings, as we are. We mentioned already that healing and forgiveness cannot be attained at a mere wish, but exhibit a gift-like character as well. Here the theology of grace and of healing interconnect. We hope to have shown that we find these analogies in a superb way in Harry Potter. Now, Vonnegut goes on to explain how Harry Potter as a hero is fallen, which is to say imperfect, reflecting his fallen nature which needs transformation and grace, and that his relationships with others are what give him that capacity to realize that gifts. Now, this, is this is an alternative explanation to my induced abortion hypothesis, because that idea is the exteriorization and elimination of the hidden thing within idea. This idea is an alternative explanation to my induced abortion hypothesis, because that hypothesis is the exteriorization and elimination of the hidden thing within has its origin in the original sin and grace light, in the Christian doctrine of original sin being cured only within a grace relationship with Christ. The repeated exteriorizations reflect this theme and its most powerful conclusion in Deathly Hallows and Harry's victory over the Dark Lord. Now, that's a powerful alternative. Now, as my friend, who shall not be named, notes, anticipating my objection, is that isn't it likely that it has a lake inspiration that has this shed quality, what she does with that inspiration inside the thing, that basically is still an apologetic for abortion, but it's about original sin and grace, layered into it. She says that she wasn't equal to going that far, but I see that as a way that this doesn't have to be an either or explanation, but can be, both and. That it has a lake origin that we don't know of yet, really, and we're only hypothesizing the induced abortion, and that Rowling's Christian faith is such that it's the implicit theology. And Vonnegut, the article is worth reading just to hear him talk about implicit theology and the proper framework in which to read Rowling's work. She's not writing a Summa Theologica. She's writing a work of fiction, and so the theology is implicit rather than explicit. Nick, here's my real problem, though, is that this all but requires a relatively profound Christian faith, and perhaps a crisis of faith in Rowling's life that made itself the defining inspiration of the Hogwarts saga, because Deathly Hallows is really about a crisis of faith. She plays it out with Dumbledore, the white man with the beard in the clouds type thing, but it really is about Harry's struggle with his faith and coming to terms with his doubts. You're the resident lake man here, Nick. What evidence do we have of either that kind of faith or a faith crisis? Because I don't recall that in our evidence.
So here's the problem with J.K. Rowling and discussions about her faith. She's British,
Yeah.
which means you don't talk about your faith or religion unless you're asked, and British people don't ask. So. Our evidence for Rowling's faith is remarkably patchy. We've got some spots that we can locate. So we know as a child, she attended St. Luke's Church, which is the church that's sort of attached to Church Cottage. She attended services. She earned pocket money along with her sister for helping to clean the church. We can assume that if she attended church regularly, she would have been confirmed into the Anglican communion. We have no evidence for her attending church then when she went to Exeter. We have no evidence when she lived in London.
She said she fell away from even that practice when she.
Yeah, and I think that's in fact, I'd say it would be common. So going to university at that age with that age group, it would not have been a common student thing to go to morning worship on a Sunday. So it's the kind of thing that would be fallen out of. The next evidence we have for her attending a church is in Edinburgh, where we know she attended the Scottish Episcopal Church, which is the Anglican communion within Scotland. So I think it is significant that she chose the Anglican communion, the Scottish Episcopal Church, rather than the Church of Scotland, which is the established church in Scotland that is Presbyterian. She would have been familiar with the services. She would have been familiar with the Book of Common Prayer. We know that Jessica was baptized into that church, so that also suggests that she wasn't attending an Anglican communion while she was in Portugal. She also had a part-time job. So before she started teacher training, she had a part-time job within the church as an administrative role, very part-time. So she didn't earn too much that her welfare would be reduced. Outside of that, we have no evidence of her continuing to worship in a church after Harry Potter's success.
We don't even have the name of the pastor at St. Luke's, do we?
No, and I have this annoying habit of, if I don't know something, I really try and dig into it. And there's other than the passage of time, the real challenge with St. Luke's is it isn't a parish church. So it is a church of ease. So it is a church that has been built to service a community where it was felt this community was too far away from their parish church. That meant they didn't have a full-time vicar. So anyone from the parish team could have held services there. I know within the last decade, quite a high-ranking priest used to love to hold services at St. Luke's, and he regularly did that. It's one of his favourite churches.
It is a beautiful space. It is a beautiful church.
Yeah, it is. So, but we don't know. So absent somebody who was a member of that congregation and is willing to talk to us, it's really difficult for us to know who the priest would have been that J.K. Rowling would have heard his sermons.
Do we know anybody who lives nearby, Nick, that might go there some Sunday to look for an older woman to see? Do we know anybody that lives within like a reasonable drive of that place that could do that?
So there is somebody that was following the Kanreki series, but I suspect the last episode has upset them a little bit. So I hope they maybe they go back to the Golden Threads and have listened to it again and maybe change their mind. In terms of crisis of faith, again, we got very little evidence outside of the text, apart from, so there was one brave interviewer who I think is related to the Archbishop of Canterbury, made a documentary called A Year in the Life.
The Sun, Nick. The Sun, yeah.
Yeah, chap called Runcie. So he pushed her on the subject of religion. Does she believe in God, she sort of stiffens up at that question and looks really uncomfortable. And that's typically how British people look when you do challenge them on
Nick,
the notion of spirituality.
You're just asking the question and you say, God,
So she says, yes, but admits to being doubt-ridden about a lot of things. Mr. Runcie presses, does she believe in an afterlife? Yes, I think I do. So, you know, she has questions. I think the evidence from the text for me is quite clear that yes, she believes in an afterlife. Yes, she is spiritual. An awful lot of the imagery is Christian that you could argue is just because that is the faith she knows the best. She the faith that she grew up in, but nothing definitive.
well, oh well, that's tough. I mean, yeah, I'm of two minds about this clearly, and and if you know anything about Christianity, being of two minds is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm the guy. I wrote How Harry Cast a Spell. Right. I mean, I've written a book about the Christian substance inside these things, and I've read other things like Bondiger stuff that I've just read. Wonderful. I've read Beatrice Groves' literary illusions in Harry Potter. It's chapter 4, where she talks about becoming the guy that argues for mature Christian faith, and the pocket just as being literary. But boy, I also made the argument that Rowling, is spiritual, not religious. She, her misgivings about God are pretty pedestrian, and it's hard to see. Just for example, her inability to say anything about Muslim atrocities against women, Christian women, or just women in general, in the UK or elsewhere, until just absolutely pressed about it by friends like Julie Bindel and stuff. It doesn't really speak to any kind of. It speaks to a real desire not to be linked to church. So there's a real church thing, and we know that she has reason to be have a history of having been wounded by the church ladies, the people that came after her during the Potter Panic. But yeah, it's hard to see the depth and the symbolism and the persistence and the profundity of the Christian content of her work, and then say she's spiritual, not religious. It's a tough thing for me. But anyway, but boy, that's a big question. We talked about how questions could be asked to her about the induced abortion hypothesis. I definitely want a Brit to help me frame the questions about how to talk to her about her faith. Runcie didn't have much luck, but I think he was a little too direct. Do you believe in God? Whoa, that's as you said. That just
you could see how uncomfortable she was. Yeah. So is now the time to get Darwinian, John?
Yeah.
So you and I are both mammals. We happen to be the kind of mammals that don't have the ability to gestate our own young.
Those gametes, Nick.
Yeah. So yes, our small mobile gametes. So as you mentioned, I think briefly earlier, our friend of the Substack, Iroar, mentioned.
Hope he's out there. Hi, Roar.
Yeah, mentioned essentially about the biological solution to the lost child. So it is a fundamental aspect of femaleness, from girlhood into womanhood, that their bodies are developing and changing to enable that ability, that miracle of an ability to gestate young human beings. And it is for anyone who is particularly thoughtful, I think Rowling is, that's got to take up a fair amount of your subconscious. But could that be the simple explanation?
Yeah, this was the first alternative theory. We got right in the comments to the threads, and I want to read you Rohr's thing here because it talks explicitly about being an alternative idea. She wrote, whether or not Rowling herself has had an abortion, I got to read this, so forgive me. I think it makes sense. Whether or not Rowling herself has had an abortion, I think it makes sense that she'd want to comment on the topic, given her golden threads about violence against women and girls, pregnancy traps, and mother's love. It occurred to me after writing that comment, I don't think a woman has to have personally experienced an abortion to have spent most of her life thinking about the subject. I reckon a big part of the female psyche from the time one is a girl is a strange combination of awe and terror at the fact that falling pregnant is a power we have, but not necessarily one we can guarantee will always be in our control. In my country, a 2023 landmark study showed 1 out of 3 girls are victims of child sexual abuse. But much more mundane than sexual and domestic abuse, I've known straight friends to fall pregnant by accident, even while using contraception. I think it's a very unique issue in a girl or woman's psyche, because on the one hand, it is one of the worst possible consequences of rape, and therefore it's part of a woman's, as Matt I would say, constant vigilance about the threat and reality of male pattern violence. But on the other hand, and however an individual woman feels about children, it is something both inspiring and grave. As Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. And first of all, thank you. I want to thank you, first of all, as we requested alternative ideas, and bang, you delivered. And that I can't tell you how reassuring that was. This wasn't just going to get into a pile on about how insensitive John and Nick were to bring this up. I want to thank you too that you made this comment, because if I had made that comment as a man, as the old white guy in the room, I would certainly have been accused of misogyny, because it suggests that all women ever think about is finding a mate and having children and being afraid of being attacked, and that consumes women's minds. And that's not what Aurora is saying, and that's certainly not what I'm saying in dealing with thesis, because that's not true. But it is an essential part of female life and psychology that is neglected by those who want to obscure the differences between men and women, to include men and those women that are a certain school of feminism. Life and psychology, the potential to be pregnant, that is neglected by those who want to obscure the differences between men and women. Men, because it's convenient for them. Let's just pretend we're all the same, therefore I can treat you badly, like I would a man, and ignore the biological realities here in play. Hence transgenderism and invasion of female spaces, etc. Or women that are feminists of a certain school want to say, no, for women to have equal access and rights and this and that, we have to say that men and women are exactly the same. Rowling, and this is a wonderful book. It's called Becoming Myself, Reflections on Growing Up Female. Now, you don't hear this book referenced very often in Rowling studies, which is a shame. It's a very short piece. It has famous women writing about what it meant to grow up as a woman and how they think about that. And Rowling wrote a pretty short piece on this. It's really 2 pages. But she has this thing in here. She wrote, I can't think. I'll read 3 paragraphs. I never told my family that I wanted to be a writer. They would have told me I didn't have a hope. People in my family did not become writers. There was a great emphasis on mortgages, pensions, and career paths. I felt I would be taken about as seriously as if I had said I wanted to be a pop star, and sternly dissuaded. And then she notes in parentheses, not that it would have worked. I can't think of an occasion when I felt it was useful to be female. I can, however, remember passionately wishing I were a boy on a couple of occasions, but that was because I was dreaming of knocking out a particularly vicious male bully. And here's why I bring this up. The one event that for me triggered a deep experience of feminine power is giving birth. There is nothing more magnificent in the whole of nature. She goes on to talk about her daughter and things. But that statement, the one event for me triggered a deep experience of feminine power is giving birth. There is nothing more magnificent in the whole of nature. Now, that's a fairly profound statement about, a life event that was core and event into that. If there was an event, like Gloria Conti or Margot Bamborough has a child, and she immediately says to her best friend Una and to her husband, both of whom were Roman Catholic, I believe, that her feminist views about abortion had changed absolutely. That I'm thinking may have been, part of Rowling's experience. Again, you're arguing from text to biography, but that her saying that there's nothing more magnificent in all of nature, that's a big deal. Rowling's feminist core beliefs, as we know, are a biology-based feminism that simultaneously advocates for the equality of men and women to pursue their vocations while still maintaining the differences between the sexes. Their need for safe spaces, distinct sports, etc. Her life experiences as an abused wife and as a mother pursuing her vocation as a writer testify to these convictions being hard won. And you can look at Robin, this crisis of a vocation, ticking clock, alignment with Rowling at the time of Harry Potter's inspiration. But and I'm going to push back, though, Aurora, on this, because there's some difficulties with this alternative theory. Namely, Rowling's abuse at the hands of her first husband and as a single mother post-date the inspiration for the Harry Potter novels. Unless we're allowing that she arrived at them either simply in virtue of being a woman in her 20s, what all women experience and feel more or less profoundly and more or less consciously, or through an experience or event which crystallized those biology-based feminist ideas for her. Which latter possibility, of course, brings us back to the induced abortion hypothesis. So either we have to. That's the power of what you're saying, Aurora. I think is that all women, as being potential mothers, have this in their psychological backdrop from menarche at least forward, if not before that. I've had 4 daughters, who have gone through that process, and obviously my wife, she had 6 children and adopted one. And I'm well aware of that reality in a woman's mind and how it makes them different than the boy. I also have 3 boy children, and then you just can't see, boys and girls go through adolescence and not see that there's this tremendous change after menarche that just is such a marker that is only the willfully blind can't understand. But that Rowling is different in that she made this thing such a predominant theme and plot point inside her books, this lost child and its 4 aspects through her books. I don't know. It's definitely the alternative theory which has gotten the most support in our Substack comment threads, and I get it. I like it. I just don't know if it, because of the timing involved, whether it's as powerful as we think it can be. So Nick, we've gotten 2 serious alternatives here. We've gone through the Christian alternative too, which I think is really powerful. We just don't have any evidence that because there's never been, as you said, any confrontation, any exegesis from Rowling. We're waiting on that critical biography, I guess, where she'll actually discuss these things freely. And we've talked about the it's just because we're women, stupid alternative thesis. All right. But there's another one. And this, I'm bounce passing this to you, Nick, because you recently found some evidence in the Shrek novels that buttresses a theory that David Martin posted at Hogwarts Professor during our discussions of the Gloria Conti Foundation crime and Troubled Blood. which again is the only in-story discussion of feticide that we have in all of Rowling's work. I'm going to ask you, Nick, to review what David offered as a model for the Conti story, which is not biography as template, and your finding that seems to suggest that this is really an important source for the pivotal event in perhaps Rowling's greatest novel.
Okay, well, I think nobody can put it really any better than Ed can himself. So this is what he wrote.
David, this is David.
David. Gloria Conti's abortion that Margot arranged for. You will recall that Gloria Conti became interested in what seemed to her to be the glamorous mafioso lifestyle by seeing the film The Godfather. It may be worth noting that at the end of the film, The Godfather Part 2, Michael Corleone believes that his wife, Kay Corleone, has had a miscarriage, and that her sorrow over that miscarriage is what has made her depressed. In an angry rant, Kay tells him instead that she had an abortion, aborting what would have been his son because she does not want his crime family to go on, and she wants out. So we have two fictional women, each seeking to limit or escape their involvement with a mobster and using the same means to do it. Even if Gloria Conti did not see The Godfather Part 2, although it was just about out at the time of Margot's disappearance, it's perfectly possible, perhaps even likely, that J.K. Rowling did, and so may have borrowed a bit of the plot. So far, so good. If you want to confuse me, make a reference to a film, because I'm just such a dreadful film watcher. So although I remember seeing David's post, it didn't mean a lot to me because it was a plot of something I'd never seen. However, when John reminded it to me in discussions around the Kanreki, wow, okay, so I do remember something from Lethal White. Chapter 45 of Lethal White, right at the beginning of that chapter, we have Strike paid in pain for the walk through the woods at Chisel House the next morning. So little did he fancy getting up out of bed and heading downstairs to work on a Sunday that he was forced to remind himself that, like the character of Hyman Roth in one of his favourite films, he had chosen this business freely. If, like the mafia, private detection made demands beyond the ordinary, certain concomitants had to be accepted along with the rewards. Okay, so how do I know this relates to The Godfather Part 2, which can't be my favourite film because I've never seen it? Because I know so little about films, I had to look up who on earth this Hyman Roth was, and I remember looking it up and finding it was from The Godfather Part 2. So we've got a couple of takeaways from this. Not only has Strike seen The Godfather Part 2, it's his favourite film. I think this makes it more than likely that J.K. Rowling has seen The Godfather Part 2. Enough that, even if it's not her favourite film, she can ascribe it to being the favourite film of one of her major characters. So I think she's more than familiar with the plot within Godfather Part 2, and it is strikingly similar to actually what Gloria Conti was going through in Troubled Blood. I mean, I just have to say, theory confirmed.
Yeah, hats off to both you and David here. That went right over my head. And I'm not a film watcher either, as you know, and I've not seen the Godfather films. But you looked up the Hyman Roth thing. I was like, wow, why didn't I look that up? Such a great catch. Two things about this. One is that Rowling does mention Godfather Part 2 in Troubled Blood. I think Gloria Conti herself says she would have rather run a mile than go to see the film. She was so sick of The Godfather at that point. Now, So we don't know whether Gloria has actually seen the film. She's, as David points out, she's living that film. She doesn't need to see the movie, right? I mean, she's gotten the reward of part one, and now she's living part two. And I think Rowling Galbraith is clearly highlighting that to us to do what David did and go back and look at Godfather Part Two. She didn't see the film, but you should go see the film, and that to me is a real highlight. And this alternative theory, now it doesn't explain any of the lost children stuff, okay, but it takes out, or maybe it gives an alternative possibility for a pillar of the induced abortion hypothesis, which is Gloria Conti's case and the Margot Bamborough experience there around an abortion and her escape to another country, et cetera. That's clearly Rowling's experience. Now, why would that film perhaps be, Nick, Rowling's one of her favorite films? Because she lived that experience. That she had that abortion. I mean, it's as much an argument for the induced abortion hypothesis, I think, in the end, as anything else. The reason that she loves that film so much is that she sees Kay, she understands Kay's agony there. And the bravery involved in confronting, Corleone about killing one of his, his progeny. Now that's, but still, that I like that alternative hypothesis in that it gives us a literary / film model that Rowling might simply have been borrowing in that case. Okay, I'm saying that you could turn it around and say it's still a Lake moment, and the reason she likes that film that much is because she, like Gloria Conti, had that experience. But it's still, if there's going to be a Lake alternative, which is not strictly biographical, it's going to be bibliographical, work that had importance in her life. And the Godfather films, she talks about how important those films were in Gloria Conti's life. Perhaps she's saying they had that similar effect with her. Okay,
so I think it's fair to say that people have responded with enthusiasm to your plea for alternative hypothesis to the lost child thesis. I think, certainly from the comments we've had, everyone has been extremely supportive of the work that you put into this. There was, and maybe I was being a little unfair, but when we went through the examples of lost child through the different bits of the different pieces of Rowling's work, there was one in particular I was reluctant to sort of recognize that was a valid one. I think I said the jury's out on Prisoner of Azkaban. Was that right? So
that's right.
Our friend Ed Shardlow has come to your defense.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, wherever you are. I hope you're watching. I really was frustrated. Even though I haven't written up the thoughts, I was frustrated by that basically Scabbers was the exteriorized evil, and that was the equivalent of an abortion inside that book. Anyway, let me read Ed's comment. Okay, Ed wrote, Hi, ladies and gents. I've been on holiday and just catching up on the end of the Kanreki series. I see that Snakewood wasn't the big reveal because you were saving that for the final chapter. He's referencing the fact that Rowling is a snake and that the Snakewood wand of Salazar Slytherin was probably a reference to her Chinese astrological symbol. Anyway, even the penultimate episode enumerating all the lost children and speculating on that theme's Lake origins didn't dilute the impact of seeing how the classic Rowling themes of coercive relationships, motherly love, pregnancy traps, the protection of family, and so on, not only come together in that one golden thread, but how it does indeed illuminate the entire Harry Potter series. It certainly has the ring of truth for me. It certainly explains why morality and mortality are the crucial core to its meaning. The last episode was definitely one of those light bulb moment experiences for me. Love it. Okay. I feel like there may be more abortion analogies in Azkaban. Okay. And then then Ed lists some of them. Perhaps the wolf inside Remus. And that's a beautiful one. That you have this thing. But that's also, again, the Christian one, is exteriorized, evil, whatever. But I like that, the werewolf thing. I think there's something quite uterine about the shrieking shack, and maybe something even obstetric. Okay. There's also the execution of the innocent buckbeak. And that's great. This beloved animal that has to be killed and yet is saved. It's kind of a wish fulfillment thing. But the whole world is saying, you must kill it. You must kill it. You must kill it. There's an abortion echo in that. And the Dementors taking the souls, that's my addition, back to Ed. And the Dementors taking the souls of their victims, against whom the remedy is a reassuring and inspiring Patronus. Now that's, if you see the Dementors, you read the Dementors, this is me again, not Ed. If you read the Dementors through the induced abortion hypothesis, that's a horrible thing. That's like the vacuum abortion thing. It just takes the soul out of you when you have that procedure. But there's a life-saving thing in this inspiring Patronus, that you have a core energy, an essence, which is what saves you from that destructive experience. Really, that's Nick. That saves, I hope, Prisoner of Azkaban for you in terms of the induced abortion hypothesis. That's a wow. Perhaps, and back to Ed. Perhaps that's the embodiment of the good dads saving the innocents under their guardianship. This thread also offers another interpretation of the Christmas pig, the traumatically obliterated DP, forever consigned to the land of the lost. Even though he winds up in a very good place, lost, right? If he's the aborted figure, he winds up in paradise. Anyway, forever consigned to the land of the lost, the replacement CP carrying the love of his lost brother. Wow. I mean, really, Ed, 5 stars for that alternative hypothesis. It's not an alternative hypothesis. Thanks for filling in one of the weakest points in the induced abortion hypothesis reading of Harry Potter with 3 points that I'm going to have to forever credit you as having seen before I did. Anyway.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So
you're the Christmas pig guy that always sees things in Christmas pig I don't see, Nick. I mean, first of all, did that save your? Yes. You said the jury is still out. Do you think the jury is still out on that in terms of this? I mean,
no, more than. I thought that was a wonderful analysis. I really did.
Yeah. And really, what I get from Ed's comment is, and especially the Christmas pig, that this isn't just a Harry Potter thing, right? This is not just a troubled blood thing, but that we need to do a strike book by book look, as well as a Harry Potter book by book look, to see if there's more stuff in there that's like that. And I haven't done that. In fact, I have a lot of work to do, Nick. I mean, seriously.
Well, we're on the countdown now for the Hallmark Man. So I think, I mean, the Kanreki stuff is not going to stop. But I think, so next week, I think it would be great to have a look at the countdown to Hallmark Man. I know you've read The Maid of the Silver Sea, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. I know that I've been taking a little look at the marketing, which I have to say, John, has been in terms of professionalism a step above what we've last seen in the last few books. There's a few oddities as well I'd like to talk about, but what I'm most excited to talk about, and I'm a bit nervous about this as well, is that the idea of the Dickensian serial read for the Hallmark Man. I have really poor impulse control. That's why I'm nervous about it. But should we for next week's episode, should we talk about that?
You want to put that off, Nick? Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about a bunch of stuff. I want to talk about, the different. For example, there have been different Strike 8 synopses that are different than the one we got in English.
Yeah.
There's Rowling comment, her filmed comment. There's the 5-minute audiobook release. Yeah, and then what we're doing to prepare for the books.
We haven't.
I just finished Oxingham's Maid of the Silver Sea last night. Really excited about that, especially its links with Lethal White and Rosmare's Home.
We haven't talked about J.K. Rowling tweeting us.
Oh yeah, we forgot that. We forgot that Rowling went off on Lake and Shed and gave us an entirely different perspective. She basically said, "Read what I've written about this in my on-writing essay," and then gave us an entirely different idea of the lake. It's the universal soul. I was like, "Whoa, thank you." That was much better. If you're out there, Joe, you're listening. That was a lot better than Invitation to the Party. That was getting a little Lake and Shed extra. But yeah, let's talk about that next week. Let's go into that next week.
Wonderful. To the guys that are watching, please do send in your questions. Have a think about if it's something you do want to commit to. This idea of the Dickensian serial. I'm willing to put my poor impulse control unleashed. I'm willing to go dark on Twitter if I think there's enough people that are interested in doing this with us. I think we need to do it as a group.
Wow. Okay. Just a little more explanation of that. The Dickensian reading of Hallmark Man would be pretending that Rowling releases the book by parts.
Yeah.
So that we only get epilogue in part 1, and then we get part 2, and then we get part 3. And imagine that there's a gap in between that. We don't get them in one volume. And we would do that every 3 days. We would do discussion for 3 days, and this would be for paid subscribers. And I would write an essay every 3 days about the parts that I'm reading and stuff. I should say that paid subscribers and some Hog Pro All Pros got copies of our questions before we did this today, and most of them just said, "These are great ideas. Don't worry about what I think." But if you are a paid subscriber, you do get the questions in advance before we film these things and give us your ideas. And soon we'll hope to be inviting paid subscribers and Hog Pro All Pros to join us here inside this inside our Lake and Shed. So anyway, thank you to all those people who paid for the privilege of being part of this conversation. It's really an honor to us that you do that. It pays our bills. Thank you to all of you that are listening in here for your comments. And you're the reason that we have these conversations, is that there is a global audience of serious readers of Roland Galbraith's works. And we're committed to observing Rowling's ideas of how to interpret her works in light of her Lake and Shed writing process, and seeing the works as a whole. And we're glad that there's an audience for that kind of thing. Everything that you comment confirms that idea and the delight that we have in being part of that.
Great. Thank you, John. And we will next week.